Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to be here with you. My name is Collins Apuoyo. I represent Enterprise Professional Services. I am the Director of Strategy and Product Development. Enterprise Professional Services Program aims to drastically reduce the incidence of water pollution by used engine oil. I think social entrepreneurship is using a business approach to solve a social problem. And the approach should be one that ensures that everybody involved in the process makes a living.
My name is Satyan. I represent Drishti. I think my story started about 25 to 30 years back when I was a small kid visiting my village in eastern part of the country, which is India. I used to be thrilled when I used to go back home on summer holidays, at times on winter holidays. And obviously, in between there was floods for 3 months, so therefore my village was inaccessible. But over the period, I realized that while I was growing, my village was not. Look, for me, the social entrepreneurship is a continuous effort to go down the pyramid, which is the much talked about pyramid now. All of us every entrepreneur starts at some point in that pyramid, and a social entrepreneur has a continuous will to move deeper and down the pyramid where the volume exists but the margins are razor thin. So I think that is what social entrepreneurship means to me.
Just wanted to start by explaining to you the problem that my organization addresses. I'm with the Sprinkles Global Health Initiative in Toronto. I'm the Director of Strategic Planning and Technical Director as well. The problem that we address is vitamin and mineral deficiencies among children in developing countries. It's not well known that vitamin and mineral deficiencies is the second highest priority after HIV/AIDS in developing countries, which was rated at the Copenhagen Consensus in 2004 by leading economists. Vitamin and mineral deficiencies affects approximately 750 million children worldwide, and it's also known as the hidden hunger. If you looked at the classic definitions of a social entrepreneur, wanting to change the world, using limited resources to accomplish great things, doing things differently. We've certainly done that. The piece that I'm trying to figure out with my organization is how we can become a self-sustainable entity so we won't have to rely on the donor support year after year. And that is a bit of it's a little bit controversial in our field because we come from academia. So finding the structure, the way to do it, to build our organization is why I'm here.
One of the biggest issues on the for-profit side is to structure it in such a way that your international investors can get the money back. Even with the social loan, you have to structure it in such a way that your investors are able to repatriate the money sources that they put back into the US, for instance. So
each year, 15 to 18 social entrepreneurs are invited to come to the Global Social Benefit Incubator, a 2-week residential boot camp at Santa Clara University. During this time, they develop business plans for scaling their proof of concept social ventures and a clear roadmap for executing these plans.
Look, one thing which I always believed in was the fact that I don't have to wait for maybe 20 years of earning money before I go back and do some good. So I wanted to do good while I was earning money. So it was not a very difficult proposition for me. So I actually, when I conceptualized Drishti, frankly, it came out of the project that we were doing. It was more like evolution. And I did realize that it was very close to the core concept of using technology for doing good, which was coming out. So the project itself had a strong value proposition for me.
I think when you talk to the poor people who we see as really having these social problems, at individual level, if you asked them, they would not want a handout. They would want to be empowered to do things and to earn a honest living. If the poor earn honest living from a honest enterprise, and the honest enterprise earns a honest profit, and everybody benefits, I don't think anybody should be actually sorry or feel guilty for making profit in a honest way.
It's a new concept for me, social entrepreneurship. We only started looking into that maybe about a year or 2 years ago. And we said, hey, we're social entrepreneurs. And so it's sort of been like a bit of an identity crisis because we're also researchers. We come from the academic field. I don't know anyone else in my situation that comes from that field, the academic field. I'm sure there are many out there. I think that's the missing link for me is just understanding how a research-based group can become a social entrepreneur.
We were a startup about 6 years back, and we looked at the business in a particular angle. Yes, the social passion was the main driver, but then over a period of time, we have realized that it's not just the social aspect, but there's a lot of sense for doing it commercially. And but since I've realized it over a period of time, I don't have it crystallized today. So when I'm coming here, I'm looking at my business after getting the inputs. Yesterday was a great session, and when I go back, I'll start looking at my business more from a commercial angle.
We haven't developed a business plan. We've sort of been going as the opportunities come. We're never able to say no, so that's why we're operating in 25 countries. So one of my priorities here is to form a strategic plan and a business plan that we can follow, so that we can have a more structured growth and reach, some type of sustainability with our program as well financially.
The feeling I get from everybody who talks to me, or the feedback I get, is that the idea is good, but I'm a little less ambitious. That has come through. Secondly, I think our financials aren't coming together because I've wanted to remain in a certain level of operation, because my fear is that if I go higher and expand into the formal environment, I'll cut off the poor people whom I want to serve. I think those are feedback that I've already received.
But into areas which are sustainable, not sustainable, viable, and even profitable.
Each social entrepreneur is paired with 2 carefully selected Silicon Valley mentors. This collaboration begins via the internet before the entrepreneurs arrive and continues for years after they complete the GSBI.
Whoever operates this has to make money on it personally.
Working with the mentors have been a great experience. They have dissected the idea, they have torn it apart, and now I am able to see the linkages between the parts. Earlier on, I saw one big thing, but now I'm seeing the parts and how they connect, and to me that is great. I am together with some great people, great individuals who have taken a step of faith to turn an idea into some practical action.
He is particularly good at the conceptual aspect of the business and where it's going to go and all that. And when we got into the business model and kind of like, okay, now let's do the numbers of how that's going to go. That wasn't a part that he personally was used to doing. He would have other people do it. And so in this exercise, we said, no, that's not the way this works, Collins. You got to go back and do this. And in doing so, he was able to discover some real insight about his business. And it was delightful to watch him do that and watch him grasp onto it.
It's been an incredible experience. I don't think I've ever had a real mentor before who, you know, takes my hand and goes through the whole process with me for a number of days and weeks. So it's been very encouraging.
Since coming here, I've realized that Claudia has pretty much done the implementation and operations side of that virtually single-handed. So for the last 10 years, she's gotten to these 2 million kids by herself. Since the rest of the team are primarily researchers in the lab, she has been the one that has really put together the operational side of this whole thing. So it's a pretty amazing accomplishment. And I'm even more impressed after having met her and talked to her here in live than what I was reading about, given the sort of enormity of the task. And now I think, you know, obviously the challenge is with many of them here is how to scale.
Or some of it revenue coming from increases in the kiosks?
Even before coming to this place, I realized that I was slightly confused. So I accepted the fact that I had certain options. I didn't know which one was the best. And therefore, I put that in front of my mentors. I have been pretty explicit in the fact that I have certain decision points. I need to choose one out of the maybe 2-3 options which I have. In fact, 2 to be more precise.
A lot of it, I think, some of it will have to be when he gets home and works with his team to say, here's my new aha, here's what I'm thinking, here's what I learned, how, you know, get some on-the-ground market feedback about this new idea, maybe test a little. He hasn't done it yet. You know, he's going to have to write a whole different application set to sell on the cell phone. So he's going to have to get his team signed up to it and do some piloting to validate all the ahas he's picking up from here and replan that he's creating.
What was the growth from Mobile?
My mentor has really been helping me with telling the story, so putting the story together. I usually present more scientific, nutritional concepts, ideas, the product, the benefits of the product, the biological outcomes, the biology, the metabolism. So this has really allowed me to look at the bigger picture and tell the whole story. Why we're doing this, what we hope to accomplish, how we're going to change the world with what we're doing.
So they have listened quite a bit. I mean, I am simply amazed by the fact that people who have run their business, who know so much, who are consulting other organizations, are so willing to listen. And just by listening and just by maybe understanding what I'm trying to do, they are trying to guide me in the right direction. So it's not that they have come with a thought, they have an idea and they would like to maybe implement that idea on me or voice that idea on me. It's just that maybe they know that there is energy, there is direction, but there are multiple directions. So basically they need to channelize the energy in the right direction. And that direction is also coming out of me and the energy is also coming out of me, and they're purely like the mentors, as the term defines.
We learn from each other. To me, that is something that you rarely get, especially if you are somebody running an operation like me. You are ever running around trying to solve a cash flow problem or solve a human resource issue. But when you sit with people who go through the same thing like you, that sharing can only be found in an environment like here.
It might not be the biggest market, but the cheapest one. I think that the cheapest route is the top one. And you notice on the bottom there, he has 50% of the sales in the future coming from the wholesale side. I think that's the low-hanging fruit in this case, and that'd be the one you want to pursue, because the rural peddlers, although you're getting to the people most in need, it's the most expensive channel.
And so this gives you an idea of, you know, how can money really be used and what kind of changes can happen, what can actually be accomplished, which I find educational as well as inspiring.
You know, the interesting thing about the contrast between what these entrepreneurs go through and what we go through in Silicon Valley, we have a very well-developed infrastructure in every sense of the word, right? From customers to, you know, legal and engineering and operational resources. This is the most fertile place possibly
not to
in
mention
the world.
funds, not to mention money.
And money, right? It's so fluid here. And when you look at what these people do and the obstacles that they have to get over, right, overcome, and the dedication required to succeed compared to what we have here, contrast is incredible. It's pretty inspiring, and you kind of, you know, I guess we're going to complain less.
When you look at what these people are doing, it's changing the lives of hundreds to millions of people in some very significant ways. And it's really inspirational, it's very admirable. And then you meet them in the flesh and you realize they're even more inspirational and admirable. And the chance to interact with them and to potentially have some impact on how they're thinking about things or how they might structure things and so forth is really, really exciting and rewarding. But I would say I'm probably getting more out of it than they are. It's thrilling to be around them and watch their thinking and listen to them develop and grow.
There is nothing like interacting with these folks and recognizing that they're doing it against all odds, right? And although I'm helping them from a business perspective and about thinking about things, frankly, I'm learning a lot from them, And having grown up in India, it's almost it's nice to be able to see that there are people with heart across the world who are truly trying to make an impact and change the game, And if I can help, that's great.
So the first step in the future is next year. And what we would like to do is to get you to think about the issues associated with executing your plan. And as we mentioned a couple of times, Eric's class is...
Social entrepreneurs are empowered to think big. They walk away with the knowledge and skills that they need to achieve sustainability at scale in their social ventures. In practice, nearly 30% will scale up significantly in the number of beneficiaries they serve, a success rate that is 3 times the success rate of conventional for-profit incubators. Many GSBI alumni have gone on to become the focus of case studies on what works in the field of social entrepreneurship, or gained access to new sources of capacity-building capital. In addition, they become part of an expanding network for sharing knowledge and accelerating growth.
As we move towards transforming into a research group more in towards a program and a nonprofit organization that is self-financing, hopefully we will accomplish the self-financing part in the next 3 to 4 to 5 years. And then we'll just have to see where we go from there. I mean, perhaps one day we can become a foundation or a donor agency to help programs along that, provide services to children.
I would love a situation where the project that I'm working with here can be sustainable in the next 5 years and it takes off on its own and we can engage people to run it away from our NGO and still retain its client base as the poor people. I would love to see that happen. I would be excited if 10 years, at least I can look back and say, there are maybe 5,000 people, 10,000 people who actually broke out of the poverty cycle simply because they hooked onto opportunities that were created through my organization. It would be impossible to dream of 1 million people, but if there are 10,000 people whose life have changed dramatically, to me, I would have done my contribution.
We normally, when we call people poor, we call people poor because they are economically maybe not as good as we are, but the fact is that they are pretty rich in certain other aspects, and therefore it's more like what we are trying to do is to learn from each other, maybe have two communities. One is rich in culture, one is rich in the knowledge of family values, the other is rich economically, and maybe the two can share.